The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pierro. I want to welcome you to our program today. It's entitled My Home, My Castle, Keys to Aging in Place. And so when we talk about this topic, we talk about long-term care, and what a lot of people think of when they think of long-term care is nursing home. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Because AARP just did a study, and 95% of the people that they studied said that if they did need care at some point in their life, that they would prefer to age in their own home. And my family was that way. My mom said, the only way I'm leaving this house, which we built, is feet first. She never wanted to leave her home. And that's how most of our clients feel as well. Unfortunately, healthcare today has some issues. If you've been in the healthcare system, you may have experienced some of those issues. And we have with us today my co-presenter, Susan Vale. And Susan joined us. She is an LMSW, and that's a licensed master's in social work. And Susan worked at Albany Medical Center Rehabilitation Center for
9 years.
9 years.
10.
Before joining our firm. So she was dealing with people who went to the hospital, went to rehab, and then were told, you need to go to a nursing home. You don't want to be in that situation. So without good planning, you may end up there because the healthcare system just puts you in what I call the rapids, and you're heading toward the waterfall. And you don't want to be in those rapids. You want to have a lifeboat. So if something happens and you do have a critical illness and a chronic illness, you have a plan in place so that you can latch on, stay out of those rapids, be in your home, and be able to receive care and afford to pay for that care to keep yourself at home for your lifetime. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So when we look at this, our learning objectives, to understand the importance of planning in advance. Because, as we say, failing to plan is planning to fail. So we're also going to talk about the steps necessary to get a legal and financial plan in place. What are the documents, the financial tools that you should be thinking about to prepare yourself so that you're an educated consumer and you're confident that you have the right plan in place in the event something should happen to you. To become familiar with what the options are for care, because they're changing. And we're going to talk about some things that we're developing in our practice, along with Everhome Care Advisors, which is a new company here in the Capital District, which are bringing things like technology and products and services into the home that help us take care of ourselves and our loved ones in a way that relieves the burden, allows caregivers to manage their duties as caregiver while they still have a life and a marriage and their own children, and be in that caregiver role and get the best services possible into the home, and then some hands-on tools for planning now. So if you haven't heard our show, we'd love for you to listen. We're on every Saturday morning on Life Happens Radio. And it's WGY at 11 a.m. And we're on, it's a call-in show, so you can call with questions and you can listen to other people's questions and our answers. But we get a lot of feedback from the show, so that helps us to define seminars in our practice. And very often people come in. I just met with clients this morning at 9 o'clock who, believe it or not, her mother heard the show and told her that she should come in and do a consultation. We went through their own personal situation, and unfortunately, her husband, who's young, has been diagnosed with an organic brain disease. And so her mom is still kicking it, but her husband now needs care. Not to mention she has a disabled daughter. who she is the caregiver for. And her son, oh, by the way, adopted a daughter, and he's single, so she's taking care of her granddaughter, her daughter, her husband, and her mother.
Oh, please go right ahead.
That's not unusual in today's world. We get to be caregivers not just for our own kids, but ultimately our parents, sometimes our spouses. So the caregiver role is one that we want you to be prepared for. And Life Happens is something we use to help prepare our clients. So every case that we do begins with a consultation. And the consultation is the first meeting. And we offer that as a free consultation to get to know what your situation is and to make specific recommendations for you. And right now, you're going to sit through a consultation right here in our conference room. This is the Pierro Connor and Associates conference room. And Susan Vale and I are going to welcome our potential new clients, Beth and Frank. Hi, Beth.
Hi.
Hi, Frank.
Hi.
Hi, Beth.
Come on in.
Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Have a seat.
Where would you like us?
Just try
Right on the other side of the
Right
table.
over here, Beth. Here you go.
Look what you've done with the room.
Thanks.
Thanks.
It's spacious for a conference room.
Yes, very spacious.
So what brings you here today?
Our mom heard your radio show.
Life Happens. That's great. We love for people to listen.
Do you do that regularly, or?
Every Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, as a matter of fact.
Actually, I'm the one who kind of got Mom to listen to it because I've been wishing she would do some legal planning.
Oh, all right. I'm a doctor, by the way. I don't know if you knew that.
Okay.
Just wanted to know that.
Thank you. And Frank, where do you live?
California.
You've come in to see Mom?
Yeah, do you see the weather outside?
Yeah, I know, it's a little different. And Beth, how about yourself? Where do you live?
So I'm Frank's sister, and we're here in Colonie, and I live about 2 miles from our mother, and I'm the primary caregiver.
All right. So tell me a little bit about Mom's situation. Where is she right now?
So mom is in rehab.
At Beverly.
So she took a fall last week.
Okay.
So now she's in rehab.
Has she fallen before?
What do you think?
Well, yes.
Okay. I'm not around.
You're the remote son in California.
I'm not here that often.
I try to be there as much as I can. I simply feel guilty I'm not there all the time, but I have a family, and I have teenage kids. I can't be with Mom all the time, so it's super stressful. I try to move everything out of the way that I think she would trip on, and I kept taking out the kitchen rug, but she kept putting it back. And she kept putting it back, and I think that's might be what happened. She was lying on the floor, and I got there, and she said she'd been there an hour. I just feel terrible about it, but
Sure.
I just couldn't do it at all.
So was Mom taken to the hospital in an ambulance?
No, I drove her there. She was able to get up, but they kept her for 48 hours or so. That's why I got Frank to fly out.
And which hospital did she go to?
St. Peter's.
St. Peter's? Okay. And how long was she in the hospital?
Into the third day, she was moved to rehab.
About the third day? Okay. And what was the diagnosis when she arrived at the hospital?
So she's super sore, but the x-rays showed she did not break any bones. The question now becomes, can she really be in her own home? Can she, we always promised her.
Yeah, so from what her doctors were telling me, she's got some memory loss. She pretty much knows who we are and what's going on, but she's starting to slip a little bit. Not like how she slipped in the house.
We understand.
Is Mom able to pay her own bills at this point?
At this point, it's possible.
I have to sit with her, and Frank and I go through them every weekend, and what needs to be paid and so forth. But it's really actually pretty hard to get through all her mail. There's some Publishers Clearinghouse stuff, there's the answer machine, there's donation requests from WMHT, from the firemen. It's kind of a mess, actually.
Okay. And how old is Mom now?
86.
86? With regard to Mom's current situation, she is in rehabilitation?
Yes.
Where is she right now?
I think she's at Beverwick.
Beverwick?
I think, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know they had a rehab, but
If they do, that's what she is.
we'll check on that. Find out. So With regard to the rehabilitation, how long has she been there?
Just a few days. So I think I heard, well, I should know, I'm a doctor. The first 20 days are covered by Medicare, so I think she's still under her Medicare benefit.
Okay.
But I don't, we have to figure out how long she's going to be there.
All right.
So,
The scary thing is that I thought I heard them say she could stay there for 100 days, but we're getting the vibe from them that we need to move her as soon as possible, and that's really why we called.
Sure. They will tell you, and Medicare sometimes does pay for extended stays in rehabilitation, 20 days, you're right, paid in full, and then there's 80 days with a copayment. But very often, if she's not progressing as they see appropriately, they may cut the Medicare benefit, and then you become private pay. Have they talked to you at all about where mom will go or should go from the rehabilitation facility?
they actually gave us a list of nursing homes to place her, but that's not what
We always told her she would not have to go to a nursing home.
Is that important to your mother?
yeah. She would do very badly in an institutional setting. She would do best in her home.
Okay. And with regard to her legal documents, does mom have a power of attorney?
No, she has a will.
Okay.
We've done it some time ago. I'm the executor. Beth is the backup. And we have a healthcare proxy. That way we could talk to the doctors.
And who is the primary healthcare agent?
I am for now, but we can change that to Beth if we need to, since she's local.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about that, and that really will be mom's decision.
Sure.
Which brings up a good question. Does mom have the ability today to sign new legal documents? Do you think that she has the capacity to sign new legal documents?
So do you mean just be able to sign her name?
Well, she has to understand what she's signing
okay.
as well. Yeah.
I think so. I think she does.
Okay. We'll do an assessment on our own to make sure that she has the requisite capacity to sign a new document. But having power of attorney is going to be pretty important because someone has to have access to mom's income and assets to be able to pay bills and pay for whatever care she may need.
So just because I'm the executor, though, doesn't that mean anything?
The executor in a will is an important position, but it doesn't have any effect until mom passes. And the will goes through the probate process. That's a court process where you submit a will to the court, and it's then ruled on by a judge. And once the judge determines the will is valid, they give you, as executor, a certificate. It's called a Certificate of Letters Testamentary. Big words. But what it means is you have then the ability to collect mom's assets. But that's several months, usually after mom is deceased. But we need to have someone with access now, and that's typically done through the power of attorney.
I have to tell you that Frank's been saying, find the will, find the legal documents. How much money do they have? Are there investments? And, after our father died, it's actually quite a challenge to go through all these files and find everything. So I think I have a good handle on it, but I'm not sure I have everything.
Okay, well, we'll work with you to try to put the pieces together with regard to the legal documents and the will and the healthcare proxy, and then we would prepare a new power of attorney and go to the facility to have mom sign it for you, again, provided we determine that she has the capacity that she needs to sign her name legally on that document. With regard to her income and assets, what have you been able to find out so far?
So income, now we have to, we might want to update this, but we're thinking income, she gets Social Security, and she gets a small pension. So total comes to like 23 change or so, 23.45.
So $2,345 total per month?
Yeah, between the Social Security and the pension. Yeah.
Okay. And what about her assets?
So mom and dad paid off their house a long time ago. So the main asset is the house. They've got about 75 or so in the IRA. It was dad's, and then mom got it.
So $75,000 in an IRA.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's about 25 in the bank.
25 in checking and the home.
In the home, yes.
All right.
And that's just about everything we know.
Do you know if...
Secretive about it, actually. I think they felt when we asked them about planning that not that we were trying to take over, what was it? They just felt private about.
Right, I mean,
their-
when they grew up, they didn't really trust the banks as much as we do now, so
Do you trust the banks now, Frank?
probably more so than mom does, but, but, no, that's what we've been able to find for now. I think it's a good handle on things. There might be something small out there, but I think that's a good place to start.
Now, Beth, you've gone through Mom's house and the papers and tried to find the legal documents. As you were doing that, did you happen to find any insurance policies, like a long-term care insurance policy?
We asked them about it, but they never acted on it.
So they- No life insurance and no long-term care insurance?
No, I think we always talked to them about whether they were going to do it, and they always said they were going to, and it sounds like it never got done at this point. So I don't know if that's something we could talk about, a little
Well,
bit if-
long-term care insurance is a great conversation to have for the two of you.
Okay.
But for Mom, at this point, at age 86, it's just not available at her age. So we're going to talk about other ways to help pay for care. And you mentioned that you want to bring Mom home. Have you considered what it would take to bring her home at this point with her current care needs and how that might be paid for?
I just know I can't be there all the time, so we have to bring somebody in. Maybe the 25 in the bank?
Yeah, I mean, how much could home care be? I mean, it's got to be less than a nursing home. So I think between the 25,000 and the IRA, I would think that's probably what we would use to pay to keep her there
We could chip in.
Okay.
if we had to.
Well, and Susan is expert in this area and knows what the care costs are for home care. Would you fill them in, Susan?
Well, your care costs, they vary depending on the type of care. If she just needs someone to just be with her and sit with her, what we call companion care, that can go about $23, $25 an hour. And if it's absolute total hands-on care, she needs help being moved from where she's sitting to her bed, and that can go up to $25 to $27 an hour. And if there was any specialized care, like that nurse would need to do wound care or anything that was specialized that you guys couldn't be taught, those prices do go up
Price
from
goes
there.
up, okay.
But that's just not to overwhelm you, but just give you a bracket of the types of figures you would be looking at for out-of-pocket costs.
Thanks, Susan. So nursing homes, you mentioned the costs. In our area, in upstate New York, and I'm not sure what it is in California, but it's about $140,000 to $150,000 per year.
Really?
So home care is sometimes less expensive, but can be more expensive. If you do the math with the numbers Susan just gave and you hire an agency and you need 24-hour-a-day care, it can actually be more than $150,000 a year. So Mom's money will last her maybe a year, maybe a little more, depending upon how much care she needs.
Okay.
But then she's going to be out of money, and then you're going to need to find another way to provide her with care. But there may be some other alternatives. And Mom has Medicare, as we talked about. Unfortunately, Medicare does not pay for the types of care that Mom will be needing at home. It's called custodial care. And custodial care is not paid for by Medicare or Medicare Advantage plans or private health insurance. Unfortunately, it doesn't come under that range of coverage.
I think she said that she thought Medicare would pay for that, so it sounds like you're saying that she wasn't right.
Many seniors are under that misinformation, and it just is unfortunate, and we try to educate them as much as we can, but most people don't have a real good handle on this as your mom, and now she's in need of care. So the program that is available for Mom that does pay for home health care and ultimately could pay for the nursing home is Medicaid. And Medicaid is a very different program than Medicare because not everyone can get it.
It's only for poor people that don't have any money, as far as I know.
It is for people who have limited means, and limited means can either mean that you are poor or you look poor. And so to get Medicaid at home, Mom will be able to keep $862 per month of her income.
Okay.
And the rest, according to the Medicaid rules, would have to be paid on for her care. And if Mom has assets, they allow her to keep $15,150 of assets before Medicaid will come in and pay for her care.
So we gotta
Spending all
a
that.
lot of money. That's what,
The good news is
I'm waiting for that.
that there are things you
There is
can
the
do.
news.
Okay.
And that's what we're going to talk about next. So
Right?
that's a typical case in our office. So what do? How do you unravel it at that point in time, trying to put together all the pieces? What does mom really have? We may not know all the information. Although Beth did her best to go through the house, she may not have found everything that's there, and there was no communication before that. But based upon what we have today, what can they do to get Medicaid in place in time to get mom back home where they absolutely want to keep her and preserve mom's home and preserve mom's other assets so that she'll have them to use for herself throughout her lifetime? Can we save the income that mom has? And these slides are all in your materials. But when we look at assets here, it's about $350,000 of total value. What of that can mom keep, and what does she have to spend? And when we look at mom's income, the $2,345 a month, how many people in the room could live on $862 a month? Paying all of your other bills, food, heat, utilities, rents, mortgage, cable bill. How many people can live on $862? The good news is you don't have to. Mom can keep the $2,345 and use that for her own expenses in the home. So I want to thank our players. Give them a nice round of applause. And so we're going to solve all the puzzle and all the riddles in that case study as we go. But let's take a step back and talk about you. You came here for a reason. How many people here are caregivers right now for a parent or another loved one? Show of hands. Active caregivers? Okay. How many people are here planning for their own future? Just want to get an idea on what it is. Any professionals in the room? People who are in the biz? Okay. So, planning for the future is so important, and many people, unfortunately, don't think about it until it's too late. That's not planning. Studies show that 70% of us who reach age 65 are going to need some form of long-term care. They call it now long-term services and supports during our lifetime. And Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, in case you haven't watched the news, are being attacked at this point because they have to cut the budget, and we have another fiscal crisis coming up, and they keep kicking the can down the road for Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid. But our budget deficits federally and in New York this year we have a $4 billion deficit, are going to shape public policy in this area. So we have certain programs today that are available to us that are fairly generous in New York State. Other states don't have the same programs. We practice in a number of states. We have an office in Florida. I was just there for 5 days. When we work with clients in Florida, they have virtually no home health care under Medicaid. It's facility care. They actually have a little assisted living care, which we don't. But it's a very different program, and in other states, it's a state-by-state program. So what I'm talking about today is New York State specific. If you have relatives in other states, we can help you, but not with the information contained in today's presentation. So we want to plan early, and if we can insure risk, we're going to talk a little bit about that. That's something that we want to integrate into the plan. We want to give our clients as much freedom of choice as they can have, and the most flexibility in a plan to be where they want to be. And if you're like 9 out of the 10 people in the AARP survey, you want to be at home, not in a facility. Now, you might want to move down to Florida to a nice retirement community and have a lot of socialization, play some golf. That's a choice. You may sell your home in order to do that. That's a choice. But you want to integrate into that choice what happens if I need care and I'm in that place in Florida, what types of care can I access? So our goals, we want to have income and assets protected, we want to have legal documents in place, and we want to think ahead through these hard questions. In our practice, as an estate planning elder law attorney, we don't get to talk about a lot of happy things. Our conversations and the questions that we ask are difficult life situations. That's what we do all day. And so we try to make it as entertaining as possible with a little role playing, but they're serious issues at the end of the day. So we want to make sure that your finances are in order, that your legal documentation is in order, that your children aren't having to scramble to try to find all of the documents that they should have access to and all the information that they will need if something does happen to you. Because folks, that's not an if question. That's a when question. Something will happen to you. You may not need long-term care. But we haven't seen a lot of people, it's coming up on Easter, but we haven't seen a lot of people that have beaten the Grim Reaper. All of us someday are going to die, and that's just reality. So, as they say, death is a part of life just as much as birth, and so preparing for it and planning for it is something that we should all think about as a gift to the ones left behind. So, how can you stay home, get the care that you need, protect your income, protect your assets, and have a plan in place that's going to last for your lifetime? And when we think about care, we think about three fundamental questions. Where do you want to receive it? I've already talked about that. Most people say home. Maybe it's an adult community. Maybe it's another living arrangement. Maybe you want to live with your children. Have you asked them yet? If that's a mutual goal? Not always. So where do you want to live is very, very important. The next fundamental question is, if you do need care, if something should happen, and it can happen, we're all a banana peel away from that need for care. If it does happen, who will take care of you? Who are the people in your life that can step in and make fundamental choices for you and pay bills and make healthcare decisions and assist in your care plan? Who are the people that could actually provide the care? Frank's out in California. He's got a busy medical practice. Beth is close by, but she has her own family and kids. And raising kids today is different than raising kids 50 years ago because the kids have busier lives than their parents. And if you have 3 kids, you just put your chauffeur's cap on and that's your life for about 15 years. You're just driving the kids to soccer and dance class and art class and music rehearsals. That becomes part of our lives. And if you have caregiving responsibilities, you have a balancing act that becomes very, very difficult. These are all things that we need to think through in advance so that we have a plan if that eventuality does occur. And finally, how do you pay for care if you do need to hire care in? And in our case, I think Beth and Frank are going to have to find some aids to supplement whatever Beth can provide because Frank's out in California. So we have to look at who are the children, where are the children, are they close enough by? Sometimes it comes down to grandchildren. My children actually became caregivers for their grandparents who live locally here. And we'll talk about how that works and how you can integrate family and formal caregivers into the same plan and still have it paid for by Medicaid. So something that we can talk about and will. The 3 ways to pay for long-term care, we kind of got at it in the case study. Medicare doesn't do it. Unfortunately, Medicare has retrenched from the long-term care system. When I started my practice 35 years ago, Medicare paid for a good amount of home health care. 35 hours a week we used to get through Medicare in home health care. Susan's not old enough to remember those days. That changed in 1997.
Yeah, I know the
And so now there is virtually no extended home health care through Medicare. You may get follow-up care. She may get some, Mrs. Anderson may get some physical therapy, occupational therapy, things like that when she gets home from the rehab. But it's going to end in 2, 3, 4 weeks. And then you're on your own. And so how do you pay for that? If you don't have enough income and assets, that she clearly doesn't, to finance her own home health care plan, and you don't have long-term care insurance, which again, we're proponents and advocates, you should consider the insurance option. There are some issues with long-term care insurance. Most of them have been fixed in the system. And so the policies that are available today, we think are priced appropriately. And if you shop for that contract, we can help tailor it into a plan and we work with a number of qualified insurance agents. We don't sell insurance, but we work with your agent or your financial advisor to help construct a plan that can put that in place. And as an attorney, why is that important to me? I don't make any money off it. I don't get commissions on premiums for selling long-term care insurance. It's important to me because having done this for 35 years, I've seen the changes both in the population and in the systems. And we're at the precipice of a very large gap in coverage. And it's my generation, the baby boomers, who have been coming through the system. It's an 18-year swath. If you were born between 1946 and 64, you're a baby boomer. And there are 78 million baby boomers. And right now, they're turning age 71 at the rate of about 10,000 people per day. They're also turning 65 at that age. So we have 10,000 people a day coming on to Medicare, and at some point in that range coming on to Social Security. And so the boat is listing. The government is not prepared for this either. The unfunded obligations that the government has for Medicare, Social Security, and veterans benefits is $75 trillion. Now, our national debt is $20 trillion. The unfunded mandates for those three programs alone is another $75 trillion. So I don't mean to depress you, but that's the reality of our situation. And as an attorney, if I can say, hey, you should buy an insurance policy to have some private dollars available to you when you may need it in the future, because the government programs that we rely on today are not going to get more generous, they're going to get whittled away. You should look at private insurance as an option. You may want both. So we do planning very often where clients buy an insurance product. It may not be the total coverage, so they can buy an affordable product that will pay for home health care, for example, and then they'll use Medicaid as well. And we'll do a plan similar to what we're going to do today in the same plan, insurance and Medicaid together. So you have, again, flexibility, you have private coverage and the public coverage that you can get at the time. So Medicaid is the program that we're going to focus on today, because in our case study we don't have private long-term care insurance involved, and we don't have enough income and assets. How many people can afford to pay $150,000 a year for care without depleting resources? Not many. Top 2%. So that's what we're looking at. So the other 98% of us have to be thinking and planning. So we talked a lot about this, and these are some of the options. And there are many wonderful housing options. We have a lot of them. We did mention the Beverwick, which is an independent living facility. They do have assisted living on campus. No rehab, though. But it's a wonderful place. Avila, there are communities. They have gourmet chefs. They have pools and gyms, and they go on trips, and it's a very nice lifestyle. But if you then get sick and you need care, you can either bring care into your unit, or you can move to the assisted living unit, which is right there on campus. And one is the Eddy system, one is the St. Peter's system, and then they'll put you in one of their nursing homes if that becomes necessary. But you can age in place right in your unit in the Beverwick or at Avila, or move on as necessary. So if you want to be in your own home, that's what we're going to focus on today. And the caregiver question is something that we all grapple with. Is it a spouse? Is it a child? And it may be changing, because if you have a spouse that is the primary caregiver, what if they don't survive you? And then who is going to step in their place? Other family members, as I said, my children took care of their grandparents and were caregivers for their grandparents. Private hire help, be careful. That's where a lot of home health care is done. And we mentioned the agency prices at $23, $25, $27 an hour that Susan was talking about.
$35 an hour.
Well, if you have to pay that for an agency, but you could hire a neighbor at $12 an hour, which one are you going to do? Unfortunately, if you hire the neighbor at $12 an hour, you're probably paying either cash or check. You're not doing a payroll. You're not withholding taxes. You're not paying for workers' compensation or unemployment insurances, all of which you would have to do if they're a household employee. So there are risks involved in all of this. That said, clients come to us all the time. Very sophisticated clients that own major businesses are paying under the table. because when you need the care, you'll do anything you have to do to get it. And that's just reality. That's just the way it is. So we talked about the costs and the hourlies. What does a caregiver do? Susan, you want to
Sure.
jump in here?
And as you can see, I'm not going to state every single thing on there. They can do a variety of things. It can be from, like I said, the companionship, just being with them because of a memory issue or a cognitive issue. It could also be assisting with housekeeping. They can, because of mobility issues, they can't physically do that. Assessing whether they're taking their medications and if they're the compliance of that. When you're doing hands-on care, helping transfer, like I had mentioned in the case study, if they need physical assistance to move or do those basic activities we normally just take for granted. And then the emotional support, because a lot of us, a couple slides ago, it says, oh, I won't need the help. And then grappling of being reliant on having someone to take care of you, and that you're not, that sense of losing that independence. So that caregiver takes on a huge role. And that's why in the previous slide I talked about the different types of where we can access those caregivers, family, agency, neighbors, that type of thing. So
Beth and Frank are at that point in our case study that it's clear mom now is going to need care at home. How do you know what that care is going to look like? And a lot of people say, well, I'm sure that when I need the care, there's going to be some agency or the state or somebody's going to come in and lay out a plan for me. Susan, anybody out there creating these plans for you?
Yeah, well, there's no set agency laying out every plan. This is the way it's going to be. But what Everhome does is we help you together working with either yourselves planning for the future or of you have your loved one to get everything you need in place and look at options. Because of my ability to work and have the connections I have with so many of the companies, agencies, and facilities in the area, to be able to navigate that and to be able to do that.
One of the reasons that you came out of the Albany Med Rehab Center that you mentioned to me when we were talking and you were coming on board was that you had so many limitations as a discharge planner on what you could do.
I would get you the home care services, the visiting nurses. I would give you a list of private hire agencies because I didn't know how you or your loved one were going to progress in that time frame post-acute hospital stay. And then maybe a month or two later, you may come back to the rehab unit and say, hey, look at me, look how I'm doing, or I may get a letter. I had no control after you left of what happened. I could not set up some of the other services that Everhome can help you guys navigate. So that it was a natural transition for me to move into this field to do what I know everybody needed. They needed this type of assistance, guidance, advocacy. That's the best part about it. To just be that advocate and help navigate this what can seem very overwhelming, but it can be manageable. And everyone at Everhome and Pierro, Connor Associates, they're there to help and navigate that.
So Susan is filling a gap in the system, which exists, and that is transitional phases where you go to the hospital and you're transitioning back home. You go to a rehab, you're transitioning back home. You're in the home and you need to assess what the care is that should be brought in and then how you're going to finance it. Those are questions that are not answered by the system. And so there's this gap in coverage. So you can fill that gap by looking at a bundle of services, and we've talked about paying for care, long-term care insurance, and Medicaid. Very seldom will a discharge planner say, oh, do you have long-term care insurance? Can you get Medicaid? What are your income and assets? They really don't have the ability to dig into that aspect of a case. So when we look at Medicaid, and Frank not only is a doctor in California, but he's also our Medicaid attorney that actually files the Medicaid applications for our clients. And although that's not Frank, that is a depiction of his office. So that's what Frank will go back to this afternoon. And so we're going to turn and focus on Medicaid for a little bit. What are the rules? Because this is the only game in town. There is no other program that will pay for the care that you need in your home. And most people don't really know that Medicaid does pay for care in the home. And they don't know what the rules are as to how to get to Medicaid. And if you don't know those two things, then you're not going to be able to access the coverage that you need and stay at home, because Mrs. Anderson's assets are going to be gone in less than a year if she's private paying for care. So we want to get Medicaid in as soon as possible and start Medicaid working for her as soon as possible. And so we're going to explore how that works. And there are very different rules with regard to home care versus nursing home care. How many people have heard that there's a 5-year waiting period for Medicaid? Look-back period, depending upon how much you have. 5-year look-back period. So how many people know that nursing home care has the 5-year look-back, but home care does not? So with regard to home care, Frank, how long does it take? If somebody came to you today and wanted to get Medicaid home care in place and had all the information and access to all the assets, how long would it take you to get them Medicaid eligible?
About a week. They'd be eligible as of the 1st of April.
Medicaid is a month-to-month program, so they take a snapshot of all of your assets and income as of the first day of the month. So we have to have all the transactions completed, right, and money out of the accounts down to that asset level, which we'll go over, by the first day of the month. But if we do that, we can file for Medicaid on the 2nd. And so that's how home care works. There's no look-back period, regardless of what you've given away and when. There is for nursing home care. So no look-back, no penalties, and a different application process. Because there's no look-back period, when we file the Medicaid application for home care, we don't need a 5-year financial history. But when we file for nursing home care, we have to provide a full 5 years of financial records in every statement. And what happens if you don't give them a statement for a month 4 years ago, Frank?
They ask for it.
And what if you can't find it?
And they ask you again.
And what if you can't provide it?
They try to deny you.
They do deny you. They will deny you Medicaid for failure to comply with their documentation requests. So it's important, and sometimes you have to go to the bank and they have to try to recreate it and get all the records for you. But it's a complex process. Home care, just current finances. That's all we have to prove, is current finances. There's no look-back period. So these are the numbers. Medicaid is a numbers game. It's not Medicare where everybody gets to play. You have to have certain income and asset levels in order to qualify for Medicaid. Do you want to grab the door? And I mentioned 862, 842 plus 20 is the home care income allowance for a single individual. If you're a married couple, you get a total of $1,253 in income combined for Medicaid home care programs. If you're on a chronic care program or a waivered services program, a community spouse or a well spouse, and this applies for nursing home care as well, gets to keep $3,090 per month of income. And so those are the income rules. Individual asset limitation, $15,150. Couple, $22,200. And if one spouse is in the nursing home and the other spouse is at home, the spouse at home gets to keep $74,820, or 50% of the combined assets up to a total of $123,600. Now, you should know that in the governor's current budget, he wants to take that $74,820 number down to about $24,000. That's part of the fiscal pressure that I talked about. We have a $4 billion deficit. So you're going to see proposals one after another. And the federal proposal that scares us the most is block grants. and you might have heard them talked about. Paul Ryan is an advocate of block granting Medicaid. What that means is the federal government writes a check to the state for X dollars, and in New York it would actually be less dollars than we're getting today. And the state then has to make that work for all of their Medicaid needs. And in New York, doesn't matter how many people apply for Medicaid, get on Medicaid, you have the same amount of money to spend to take care of them all. That's a block grant. And so if that happens, the other thing that we're afraid of as attorneys is right now we sue the state all the time. We go to fair hearings to appeal Medicaid denials. We go to court to challenge Medicaid rules. And we can rely on the fact that federal law governs, because Medicaid is a federal and state program, so we can rely on federal statutes that are much more generous than states want them to be. But we can go to court and bring the state, rein them in if they go outside the lines of the federal guidelines for Medicaid. When you block grant, the states get to write their own program, and we can't rely on what's called federal preemption. So these are all the games that are being played in Washington and in Albany. The end of the day, it's a bottom line game. They have to cut the budget for Medicaid because the government can't afford it. We just had a massive tax cut that's adding $1.5 trillion to the federal debt. They got to pay for it. How are they going to pay for it? Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid. That's what's coming. So you'll hear a lot more about this as the debates begin in Washington. They've already begun, actually, but it will be ramping up. So when you look at this and you think, oh, I want to be on home care, I want to stay at home. Okay, so if I'm a spouse and I want to keep my spouse at home and we apply for Medicaid community-based services, I get to keep $1,233 of total income. And I get to keep $22,200 of total assets. But if I boot my spouse into the nursing home, I get a raise. Now I can keep $3,090 a month of income and $74,820 of total assets. What's fair about that? The system has been around for my whole career. This is 52 years old. And these disparities have been in the system because home care wasn't the same in 1965 when this was enacted as it is today. The law never caught up. So we're dealing with all of these antiquated income and asset limitations, which are counter to you staying at home, although the government will tell you that it's their policy to keep everyone in the most independent setting possible. You know who signed that law federally? George W. Bush. It's called the Olmstead Act. And it came after a Supreme Court case, the Olmstead case, that said the government is responsible for keeping us independent, avoiding institutionalization, and providing services to people in the community. So that's what you hear from the voices. But that's not what you get from the checkbook, because they're telling you they want you to be at home, but they're not willing to pay for it. And so this is the fight that we've been fighting as elder law attorneys forever. And we'll be fighting forever. But as a planner, we can plan ahead for this. And we can work it so that these rules can be used to your advantage. So this is where we start. When you look at what I can keep for Medicaid purposes, what about the home? Well, if Mrs. Anderson is going to live at home, her home is exempt as long as she lives there. When she moves or dies, the home loses the exemption, and they could recover against it in the estate. Or if she had to go to a nursing home, that is now a countable asset. So we do still want to take some steps to protect the home, but it is an exempt asset, up to $858,000 in equity. A car, she could have a car and keep an automobile. The $15,150 is the resource allowance. We can prepay her funeral and burial. So if she hasn't done that already, we can go to the funeral home and pay whatever. If it's cremation, it's less. If it's full burial, it's more. But $10,000 to $12,000 for a full funeral is kind of an average price right now. So we could prepay that, and it doesn't count against that $15,150, and it's not a gift or a transfer. So we can do that at the last minute. If she owned a business and it produced income for her, the business would be an exempt asset. In Florida, this also applies to rental real property. So what did some enterprising real property people do? They went out and put together conglomerates of housing, rental properties, where if I have $100,000 of excess assets, I can buy $100,000 worth of the rental property company, and it's not a transfer for Medicaid purposes. It's income producing property. So that's how the game is played in Florida. We don't have that in New York. Life insurance, they let you keep $1,500 of face value life insurance. So if you have a policy and it's worth more than $1,500, it's countable. How long has that $1,500 number been in the law? 52 years. 53 now, since 1965. It hadn't changed. But what has changed is they allow you to actually go out and prepay your funeral and burial now. That $1,500 used to be for burial purposes. That's why it was originally put in the law. And this is the big one. So in our case, we had an IRA, which was most of the liquid assets. And for Medicaid purposes, that IRA is exempt. It's a non-countable asset. So the clients I met with this morning, their primary asset was an IRA. They had limited other resources. So good news, the IRA is exempt. You don't have to transfer it. You don't have to do anything. If you're over age 70 and a half, you're taking a required distribution from the IRA.
Does that count as income?
It counts as income, but the asset itself is protected. So that's a major. The two major pieces here are the home and the IRA that are exemptions for Medicaid purposes. So can we give assets away and qualify for Medicaid? How many people think we can? You're all too smart for me because it's a trick question. How many people think you can give assets away and qualify for nursing home Medicaid? You can. How many people think you can give assets away and qualify for Medicaid home care? Raise your hands.
It's okay. Be proud.
You can. And it's because there's no look back. So when we look at transfer rules, we're not going to focus on these. If you're in a nursing home setting, you have more limited options. You still have options. Frank does something called the promissory note technique, where we give away assets and loan assets. So even for people already in a nursing home, we can save roughly half of what they have in assets. So you're going to spend down on the funeral, you're going to do things with the home, the IRA is already exempt, but what's left, the excess resources, you can still save about 50%, even in a nursing home setting. I'm not going to dwell on that or focus on it. If you have that situation, I'd be happy to talk to you after the program and explain how all of that works. So for nursing home care, we want to get out in front of this 5 years. For home care, we want to get out right away. Susan, is a home care plan a guarantee? Are there certain situations where a home care plan could not be sustainable?
Yes, there are situations where, due to the needs of yourself or your loved one, that it's just either not safe or the needs are too much on the caregivers. Not that we didn't give it a good try and we did everything we were supposed to. If that situation does occur, what I can do is I'm able to help navigate, and because I've been in the home and I've worked with you, I know what the care needs are. I can help locate and clear, for lack of a term, clear the way to get into the appropriate facility, whether it's an assisted living, a memory care assisted living. There are assisted livings where someone needs hands-on care up to a 1, sometimes a 2 assist. It's usually about 1 assist. There are assisted livings that will take individuals who do need help, or transfer into a nursing home. When I do what's called a care plan, I build in that future planning of where would you want your goal. Most people want it least restrictive. They want to be as independent as possible. But we can look at that, and we just I help navigate and advocate and get you what you need or your loved one needs.
So care in New York, as in many states, but in New York especially, is highly regulated. And so even in home health care, when you go and you hire an agency, there are different grades of home health aides. Susan started to allude to them, personal care aides versus certified home health aides. And there's a whole array of services. And you have to know that if you hire a personal care aide through an agency in one of the Medicaid programs, or directly, and you fall down in your home, the only thing that personal care aide can do is dial 911. They can't pick you up off the floor. That's New York State regulation. Anybody know that? Do you know enough to ask that when you're coordinating care? That's why as an attorney, having a social worker, a master's in social work, who can work with our clients to help sort out those nuanced care issues is so important, because then we can match the legal and financial plan and wrap it around that care plan to get the exact program that you need through the Medicaid program. So when we look at Medicaid home care, it's possible. So let's take a look. The main tool that we use in creating eligibility for Medicaid, whether it's home care or nursing home care, is a trust. So if you own your assets in your name, they're available, other than the IRA or exempt assets. But what can you do to change that for Medicaid purposes? So as I mentioned during the consult with Frank, and Frank loves to talk about this, you can either be poor or look poor. And the trust allows you to move assets out of your name. So when you apply for Medicaid, the assets in the trust don't go on the application. So how can I get this trust set up, and what does it mean to me if I have my assets in a trust? Am I giving them away? Am I losing control? Those are issues that our clients are very, very concerned about. And so what we want to do is design the trust, and we'll go through some of the features, to give you as much flexibility and control as we possibly can. And in this case, Mrs. Anderson has income of $2345, and she's allowed $862. So we're going to have to do something to get that income down to $862, and that's a second type of trust for home care called a pooled trust.
862 is in the home. If she's in a nursing home,
$50.
that's it.
That's what you get. That's your patient allowance if you're in a nursing home. So if Mrs. Anderson did go to a nursing home, the pool trust doesn't shelter the income anymore. It all has to go except for $50 per month, which goes into a patient account typically, and that would be there for her haircuts and slippers.
Now, you say $15,150. They get $50 a month. That's $500. Now, if that $500 goes above the $15,100, does Medicaid take that back?
Well, I'm going to let Frank answer that.
Frank?
What we would do is, if we do the application, what we do is we don't leave people with $15,150. We usually leave like 10 to 12. That way you don't go over that limit. But if they find out that you did go above that, we can try to pay them the overage. Worst case scenario is they come back and say, hey, you've got a month of worth of Medicaid that you didn't deserve. Give us all the money back for that. But we haven't had that happen yet. And hopefully we don't.
If it's home care, it's not a problem because you can gift assets away and it doesn't impact your eligibility. So if you get up to $16,000, you can gift $1,000 away and get back down under the $15,150. That's not a problem. If you're in a nursing home and you give assets away, then that's a different issue, but you can still spend money even in a nursing home. So if you need clothing, other purchases, things like that, those are not gifts. If you want to pay your lawyer extra, you can write the lawyer a check, and that money
I didn't hear that.
that money spends down out of your account. But we have escrowed fees for future services. For example, if people know that they're going to hire us to do a trust administration when someone passes who's got a trust, we may take that fee and hold it in escrow against future services, and that could be a legitimate spend down item for Medicaid purposes. Yes?
I have a quick question. So you have a person who has gone into a nursing home. They have $12,000, $13,000 in savings. Does the nursing home have any right to that money?
Good question.
Because I've actually had people whose accounts have been cleaned out by nursing homes.
Are you alive or dead?
The people are alive, and they suddenly have
Are they on
nothing
Medicaid?
left in their accounts. Yes.
Then no. No. There are certain circumstances where families do things unintentionally. There is something called net available monthly income, or the NAMI. So in Mrs. Anderson's case, she'd have a NAMI of $22.95.